Please welcome back to the stage our co-chair, Jessica Miller-Merrill.
Far away.
Oh, how's everybody feeling post-lunch, right? Are we, woo, woo? Yeah? No? No? It's a little bit lighter because some of them are getting set up and ready for the one-on-ones, but I guarantee that this next panel, stake my life on it, is going to be awesome. We were chatting it up a little bit earlier. They're funny, they're sassy, and they're smart as hell. So
No pressure or anything, James.
no, you're gonna enjoy. We have Bobbi Frioli, and we have Amy Weber, and then also Carrie Corbin. So I can't wait to see, like, you have to live up to the hype now.
Well, first thing I'm going to do is open these blinds because, I mean, why not? We were just outside. It feels, now everybody can protest if this goes over badly, but is this possible or is this totally unorthodox and a problem?
No rules, I say.
Break the rules.
There we
To a
go.
group
Now
of
we
HR people.
Ooh.
Thumbs up or thumbs down? What do we say?
Thumbs up.
All right.
Yay. All right, that's the start to a great panel.
Cool. So, oh wait, I'm supposed to start this. So we are excited. We want to bring the energy. We feel like people were kind of energetic outside till they had the chicken. So maybe we move around a little bit. You guys are sitting already. I guess I'll sit.
Yeah.
My name's Bobbi Frioli. I work for Beekeeper. I'm the country manager, and we have an employee engagement platform. So I'm excited to be the moderator for this. These guys are doing the heavy lifting, and I will let them introduce themselves directly. This is Carrie.
Hello, I'm Carrie Corbin. I'm with Dell Technologies, and I've been there a little over a year. Actually had just started with them when I came to this event last year. So I lead the global employer brand and talent attraction for Dell, and have been in this space in HR, employer brand marketing, specifically in this concentration for about 12 years and about 20 years in my overall career. So,
Cool. Amy?
Hi, my name is Amy Weber. I'm the Community Engagement Specialist at Mod Pizza. So I wear many hats. In that role, one of them is I manage our employee engagement platform, Beekeeper. I also manage our program where we hire and employ individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And I also manage our employee crisis fund. So really, I should be the employee engagement specialist, not community engagement. That makes no sense, but here we are.
It's good. You can go back and say, I would like this title changed.
I should
And
get
everybody
one.
agreed with me, so as long as everybody agrees with you, it's good. So we're talking about how culture matters, and also about, everybody's used the words engagement, culture, all intertwined. What we're going to try to do is answer some big picture questions around, well, we want the audience to participate. This is going to be unscripted. Even though I have the iPad, I have my notes here, but it is technically unscripted. So getting started, we're talking about it's not just technology, but how do you make your employees feel engaged? And listening to the previous panels, this is weird sitting this way, listening to the previous panels, it sounds like we all have similar issues. One thing that's a little bit different about what we do, what Beekeeper does, is we deal with remote workers, but not remote knowledge workers, really more workers who are non-desk workers. Thus, Amy at Mod Pizza having a bunch of 7,200 people who aren't sitting in front of a computer. So figuring out how to communicate both top down, bottom up, how to engage people, that's one of the key things we do, and it's always interesting to hear how other organizations are handling that. So my first question for you guys is, what are some steps that your organization is taking to create a respectful and inclusive culture? Either one of you can.
Yeah, so with Mod Pizza, just a little bit of a background. Our founders, whenever they open a new store, the goal isn't to sell X number of pizzas, make X number of profit per year in that store. The goal is for every store we open, that's 22 to 25 jobs. We like to say we're not a pizza company, we're a people place. And so I kind of touched on the fact that I manage hiring employees with disabilities. We also strive to hire individuals with a criminal background and opportunity youth. And we are the kind of place where everyone's welcome. You don't have to have any experience making pizzas. But with people with barriers to employment, that also requires more training. So two things we're doing is partnering with organizations that are experts in the space. For example, with our disability employment program, we partnered with Best Buddies, and they did a training webinar for all of our remote leaders. And the other way that we like to engage our employees is we encourage them to tell stories of their journey at Mod. For example, whenever we open in new stores, we always have a team meeting, and that's when everyone talks about how they got to Mod. You know, perhaps it's a story about, you know, I was incarcerated for 10 years, got out, no one would give me a chance, but Mod gave me a chance. It's a lot of stories like that. And then we have Beekeeper, where we encourage our employees to tell their stories of the journey, and it's a great way for them to talk to others, squad members, we call our employees squad members, around the country. It's a great way for them to ask, you know, hey, Chef Brian, like, would you consider making this pizza? And Chef Brian answers them. So it's a really great way to engage our employees.
Okay. And so can you repeat the question and make sure I get it right?
I was going to say ditto. So what are some steps that your organization, you're at Dell, or you can speak to past organizations if you feel like it's unique. What have you taken to, what steps has the organization taken to create a respectful and inclusive culture?
Okay, so a couple of things. I'll speak high level around what my team does. One of the things that we talked about preparing for this panel is the fact that my world is really more external around the job seekers, right? But when we think about employer brand, it is inclusive of your culture, and you know, part of my job is helping us be able to. I don't own it, but I need to make sure that we can accurately, authentically articulate it. We need to tell the story correctly. So we've been very purposeful in how we've curated our social media use and hashtags, and basically building a really strong employee advocacy platform. So kind of similar, we have Everyone Social internally. We've had a lot of mergers, so we've had like competing internal platforms, right, where, you know, somebody's using Jive and Chatter and Slack, and, you know, so, but outside of that, we have also engaged our employees to really get involved in Instagram, and we've changed our Instagram strategy to where it's purely an employee. We either do employee takeovers, or we do just employee, basically content that we can repurpose. But it's all employee generated content on that account. We're not driving that, and it's our highest engaged platform externally. And when we think about the fact that we're truly a global company, we're in 74 countries, I think. But you know, it's important that we're telling the conversation at the local levels too, and it's not just coming out, it's that curated, you know, branded company message. But from an overall internal perspective, we've got a very purposeful strategy with across our HR senior leadership team, from our CHRO and our organizational development, and in partnership with brand and marketing and with our team, where we've worked together to build a comprehensive conversation around what our culture is, what our purpose is, tie that together with our people philosophy, and then really make sure that those things are communicated through the company. And from a diversity perspective, I don't know if anybody saw the press release, but we have some big, hairy, audacious goals that just got announced, that they've said that by 2030 we will be 50% female as a company in the next 10 years. So,
50% female?
50% female.
I thought you said email. I was
No, 50% female. I'm not sure that that's attainable, so I'm hoping that it doesn't end up having negative PR 10 years from now. But we did actually couch it as it is a moonshot goal, and we know that it's going to be very hard. But it basically is putting that. Instead of putting, you know, arbitrary goals on a bunch of different leaders and tying it to their bonus, they've just made it across the company that we have to be more inclusive, and we've got to engage, and we've got to do things differently, and we're all coming together to try to make that happen. So
That's interesting. I'm hearing a lot more recently about initiatives like that. There was something that we just signed up for called the Moms Project. Has anybody heard of that? Mm-hmm. No, it's. I actually didn't plan to talk about them, but they have a whole database and find moms who fell out of the workforce, took care of the kids. 3 years, 5 years later, you know, they have lots of degrees, and they're really bored of being home with their kids, right? Or their kids went back to school. That is really an untapped market, and quite frankly, if you think about multitasking, hands down, I would hire a mom.
So,
like, just in terms of getting stuff done, and so that market, and saying, you know, you talk about the numbers, 50% female, that's one way to do it.
That's actually, we do have a program internally at Dell called Restart, and that's originated in North America that has now made its way over to Europe, and so my team is driving a lot of that in partnership with our D&I team, but it is, it's targeting our boomerangs of, people coming back, women that have worked for the company, but actually anybody that's worked for the company that wants to come back, right? But predominantly it tends to end up being women, and for that same reason, we know that that's a prime audience.
Cool. So how do you keep employees feeling connected? We talked about.
I think I already answered that on mine.
But I mean, in terms of like technology versus, are there other ways? Do you do, some people do global team meetings from the top down. Sometimes it's one way, sometimes it's bi-directional. With a large company like that, it gets more and more exponentially difficult.
Well, and the size of our company, so we're about 120,000 employees. And because we are so spread out, we are actually also about 50% remote, not global, remote. So we are around 50% for sure in North America. It's not necessarily consistent in every country. But, so part of that people philosophy that I was talking about, we actually have pillars that are pretty simple. It's the ABCs, and it's achievement, balance, and connection. And that connection is around, connected workforce and how we make very purposeful strides to ensure that we can enable people to work how they want, when they want, where they want, and still make sure that they stay connected. And so, variety of tools, including, some of the ones that I've already mentioned. But there's, but it's still a lot of the same stuff. It's using Zoom and Skype and, but we're very big proponents of using video for conference calls so that we're building relationships and that you're not just hearing that voice that's the faceless entity on the other end of the phone that we don't have any emotional connection or relationship with. You start to think differently about the person that you're doing 6 a.m. Meetings with on video, and you're both in sweatpants, and in my case, I might have worked out and I might look like a tomato with eyeballs, but if I have to be on a call, I usually try not to look that way, but it's happened. But it's part of it's being real. It's living your own personal brand, and we also do a lot of personal brand training within our company-wide, and so there's lots of different things, platforms that we have in place to try to encourage that communication, dialogue, and just that transparent conversation, both inside and outside the company.
Yeah, the Zoom thing is interesting. Are people starting to use video for all of your calls, or still, it looks like majority of, show of hands, just out of curiosity, because, oh, wow. All right, a lot of people.
And so the brain processes video, 8 times faster than, the audio or text, I think. So, and then as we are recruiting more in the Gen Z generation, right, they only know digital. And if you think about, they grew up in a world where, in some cases, digital came before brick and mortar. When you think about things like Warby Parker and Amazon, so that's like that they don't know any different.
Right, like the phone is an alien creature to them.
Right.
In a conference call, I can't believe we all spent all that time on conference calls where you're just 50 people talking and then you're just listening to random things, but nobody really listens. That's kind of the truth of that.
Yeah.
Well.
For us, as I said before, we use Beekeeper. Prior to Beekeeper, we had a Facebook group for all of our employees, and they loved posting their pictures, their stories. And then we realized there was really no way to monitor who was in that group. We had thousands of people, and with turnover in the restaurant industry, we have 1 or 2 people leave a year. So we realized there were a lot of people that were no longer with the company in that group. No way to monitor it. Legal thought it was a nightmare. HR business partners hated it, lobbied to have it shut down. So we got in touch with Beekeeper, and that's been wonderful. It's integrated with SuccessFactors, so as soon as someone joins the company, they're in Beekeeper, they're given the proper permission so they can communicate directly with their store, directly with the support center, get the information they need. And the best part is when they're terminated, they're out of there. So there's no manual work for us to do on that end. And it's really great because we're using that platform to engage our squad. The one thing we know that they love is swag. We do lots of raffles, we do lots of contests. Right now, we're doing an initiative where we want our stores to get to know each other. So we're doing this thing called Mod Pals, where they get a sister store and interview them and post what they learn on Beekeeper. And it's just very engaging for the squad. They love it. They're meeting new friends. it just honestly, it's been an absolute game changer for Mod Pizza.
This is not a Beekeeper ad.
It's not.
Thanks for
I'm not
using our name.
paid for this.
I was like, this is great. Usually when I do the moderation, I always tend to even forget who I'm with. And eventually somebody will like, oh, right, Beekeeper. And of course, corporate's like, thank God somebody mentioned us. I mean, for God's sake.
I mean, honestly, with 450 plus stores around the country, without a platform like Beekeeper, there's no way for us to connect all of them and keep our culture alive. Back in the day when we were just in Western Washington, you could get in your car, drive, check out the store, but now you just can't, drive from Seattle to Northern Virginia. So it's just, that's how we keep in touch with everyone, and it's really helping keep our culture alive.
Great. So what do you think about companies who don't invest in technology for their employees? I think most companies invest in technology. The question is it the right technology, and is it an ongoing investment? Like some people invested in something 15 years ago, and because you paid for it, you have to use it kind of thing. So do you guys have any thoughts on companies that wouldn't invest? It's kind of a dumb question for Dell, I guess. They're probably like, do we invest in? We are technology.
Dell Technologies.
Yeah. So, Amy.
I mean, honestly, I was just having a conversation with a team member that left, and I asked her, why are you leaving? She's like, honestly, I'm bored, and the new job I'm going to, 90% of what I was doing before is automated, so I can really focus on what I'm passionate about and keep, developing in my career. And I just think that if people are doing these mundane tasks that technology can do, they're eventually going to leave. That's my opinion.
So I will offer this up. I don't think it's so much about not investing at our level, right? But it's about smartly investing, and it's about understanding your technology stack, right? And because we can sometimes get sucked into the vendor sales pitch, and we go and, ooh, this is great, this is cool, let's go, And so part of my thing has always been, we're not investing in technology for technology's sake. We're investing because we need to solve a problem. But we also have to be mindful of what the downstream impact is, especially at a larger enterprise organization, right? So I've been through major ATS implementations and HRIS implementations, and people can make decisions that have a ripple effect that you don't realize with the other technology that you have. And and even just in the CRM space, and there's so many different layers to that. And like if somebody at some point would actually have a CRM that will do all the things, right? So I'm not having to have a video vendor and a sourcing tool and whatever. It's just we're not there, right? But and a lot of times we'll invest and then we don't fully utilize either. So managing the utilization, making sure that you're solving for the right problem, making sure that you're buying the right tool for the right problem. I've had teams that have said, oh, we're not going to use this for we had a situation with an event management tool, and I won't name it, but we're like, oh, we're not going to use that. We're just going to use Workday in Europe because of GDPR, because they didn't want to have to scrub after 30 days if people didn't immediately accept their opt-in email. And from I kept my mouth shut in this particular situation, but honestly, had they just stopped and reframed the problem, your solution when you're standing in an event and you need people to opt into something is, okay, you're going to get an email. Can you open your phone and accept the opt-in, right? It's like, I don't need to go change the entire technology platform, right? And so sometimes the most obvious answer is right there, and it's simple, and you don't have to go through all this investment. It's just trying to be smart about how you're using it.
Yeah, and there's a lot more consensus buying now. So, 15 people trying to agree on anything, it just is.
Well, and employees get overwhelmed too, right? If we keep changing technology, once we get people trained and, hey, we're unveiling this great new tool, and they're like, just kidding, we like this one better, and now you've got to learn this one. And that's part of the issue with the merger, right? Is that, we've got people that are brand loyalists to their to their platforms, and so they've just decided to keep them both. Instead of forcing people's hand, because that's one that's not a business imperative, but it allows for communication.
We see that a lot when mergers and acquisitions. We have somebody coming in using one platform, and they want to stay with their platform. Maybe the corporation that's buying them, or vice versa, wants to change, and it gets really hairy when it's a communication platform, right? So you have to solve that pretty quickly. So, Amy, how do you measure employee engagement at the organization? Do you guys do surveys? I mean, I obviously know you have up the platform, but how do you measure things?
Yeah, we actually have used the survey function on Beekeeper to measure engagement.
Swear to God.
I swear I'm not paid. So we done that. We recently engaged our GMs. We did a huge GM survey where we asked them a bunch of questions about training, purpose, engagement, benefits, and by far the purpose and engagement received the highest ranking. So, and I think a big part of that is probably the fact that we're all connected.
I have to introduce you to our audit Hyphen, because they have survey stuff that is incredible. Not that ours isn't good, but. Thank you. I have a free drink coming later.
So this part is definitely not the area that I own, but we do the once a year kind of pulse check, right? And we use the Perceptics tool, and I know we used it when I was at American Airlines too, and it's probably one of the better tools that I've used, that I've seen, where it's customizable, it's easy to aggregate the data in a format that's easy for leaders to understand, it's easy for leaders to be able to share with their teams, to cascade to their teams, it's easy to build action plans around it. I mean, it's still a lot of work, right? But it's much better than the old school of just the red, yellow, green, and here's the things we need to work on, right? And it helps you, it drives conversations, but again, if it's utilized correctly, right? And we do like, oh, my Band-Aid just came off. I'm putting that back on. We use like Qualtrics and a few other things, and we do the new hire surveys through Gartner for the all the different names that it's had, the red survey basically, but where we're asking new hires and hiring managers about their experience, and we're getting to that initial ENPS score, and then we're able to manage that through our process, and then through Qualtrics we get to another level, and then through Perceptics we get to another. So we've got several layers there where we are engaging them at different points in the employee experience. And I think to some of the other conversation that's happened before now, right? That's one of the things that I will tell you guys, like, I've been in this industry long enough that the amount of vendors that can come at me from every discipline of HR and say, we're going to help your employee engagement. Every one of you, right? It's just like that's so like amorphous a little bit when we think about that, because engagement means different things to different companies, but what's going to actually drive impact to the employee, it's their experience. We're worried about their engagement. They're worried about their experience. And I think that's what's the important piece in understanding from, the point that they come on board all the way to the point that they exit your company. They should have, hopefully, a positive experience through all of that, and you should be able to have a pulse on that.
Yeah, and the word engagement gets a bad rap, because really when you're talking to the management team, they want to know what the return on investment is, they want hard numbers, they want the percentages, and it all ties into something, but I just think sometimes the word engagement has been overused. It's great, but that's coming up with
questions. Does anybody have it on their HR bingo card?
HR bingo card, I love it.
Does anybody have an HR bingo card? Yeah, okay.
All right, one over there. So actually, I'm assuming everybody here loves benefits time, right? Is this an ongoing problem for pretty much everybody in this room? And no, you guys are like, we're here. Somebody else is back at the office dealing with the HR benefits rollout end of November situation. Or I guess it's quarterly usually, isn't it? But you guys want to talk about the benefits thing and how but you probably don't have to worry about rolling out benefits. You're just hiring people. You're the front end.
That was my first version of my HR career. I'm a reformed HR lady, and I do marketing now.
A reformed HR lady.
Yeah. No disrespect to anybody that's still an HR lady or an HR not a lady.
I'm surprised nobody even flinched at the word benefits too. I was looking around, but it is kind of hard to see. So if somebody flinched, you can maybe wave and flinch. No, everybody likes benefits. Okay.
Yeah, so for us at Mod Pizza, we do offer our frontline workers who are full-time benefits. So for full-time, it's 30 hours a week plus. And sometimes it's really hard to get the message out to people who are benefit eligible without reaching those that aren't benefit eligible. And we know a lot of our employees don't check their emails, but they're on Beekeeper. So what our benefits manager was able to do is just give me an Excel list with all the ID numbers of our employees who are benefit eligible. And we were able to send direct chat messages to them through Beekeeper. And the great part about this this function is we can see who's actually opened and read this message, so we know going forward who to target for further communications about their benefits. And this functionality has been really great. For example, when there's, let's say, a lettuce recall, and we have to reach out to all our general managers to tell them to pull the lettuce, and we need to know which ones haven't received that message. And Beekeeper helped us out with this, and honestly could have saved some lives. People could have got sick if the lettuce wasn't pulled. So there are some really important business cases for why this is important.
Should we open it up for questions from the audience? Because that keeps people engaged. Speaking of the engaged word, anybody have questions for us? Burning questions? Yes?
I just have one about remote workers. We have teams, including myself. I have shared service payroll operations here and in New York City. And a lot of the New York City folks for different teams are remote. So we find that the folks here, and I'm just asking advice, we find that the folks here in Florida, in the Orlando area, are a lot more connected to one another because they're there in the office more. I'm not a proponent of, or non-proponent of remote working, but I'm trying to figure out how do I get the same level of performance and partnership in an environment where most of the team members are remote. Any advice?
I would say for us, like our Texas region is way more engaged on Beekeeper than even our support center, and 100% because of the regional director. It's coming on from the leadership. He's engaged, he loves it, he sees the value in it more than anyone else in the company. Like seriously, he emails me, Amy, I want to do this in Beekeeper. Can you make it happen? Amy, I want to make this happen. Okay, I can do that, Erin. So I mean, that's what I've learned is just having the leadership embrace it and use it, and they know, he knows better than I do how it can really benefit their team, and so he just runs with it. Like I gave him that autonomy, do whatever you want with it, and he's passionate about it, and it's trickled down to his team, and they're literally sending thousands of chats a day, thousands of posts. Like, I don't know when they're actually working, but they're just posting a Beekeeper. Sorry, ops.
I think it depends, what organization do you work for? Because it also depends, there's remote working, by knowledge workers or people in sales who are out in the field.
Yeah, it's a health insurance company. We provide insurance to folks in New York City that can't otherwise get insurance. So the issue is more around just being in the city, or like a city like California where people choose to work remotely. They don't have to. We have assessment nurses that work all over the country, but I'm more talking about the regular just employees, maybe in finance, that work 2 or 3 days a week because the commute in New York City is rough. So we find that those teams aren't as connected to one another as a team, let's say, where people work just 1 day a week remote. And I've seen remote work. I worked remote myself for a while, be very successful, but we're struggling a bit with how do we and we use Skype and Zoom and all of that, but it's just the connectedness of the folks is not there.
So what is the impact to that? So is it that you are feeling like there's a productivity issue there, or is it just that the relationships aren't there?
Well, part of it is, for me personally, in my situation, I have shared service operations center, and so we've only over the last year, I've brought it on, built it, rolled it out. So I see people learning back up, learning from one another. The miss in the team members that aren't together, it's not as productive, let's say. It does happen, but it's not as progressive as somebody, I know I'm going to grab him if he's right here and ask him, as opposed to when they're not together. So that's been part of it. I guess that's somewhat of an assumption on my part, but we did all the processes. 200 processes, documented them. I could see the ones where people were together, the production of those was much faster. So maybe it's an environment of being a newer team together, but I'm just not seeing the transition of it. So I'm thinking about changing the remoteness or the allowance for remoteness in the New York City area, but of course that's very problematic. So I don't know what the answer is, but.
Yeah, but I would echo a little bit of what she said, though, even in the professional environment, because it really is incumbent upon the priority and example of the leadership, right? And how they're managing that versus if they are just left to their own devices. You know, and this has been interesting for me because I've done, just me personally, I've done hybrid of that when I was at AT&T, and then at American Airlines, I had to actually be in the office for 3 years. It'd been a long time since I'd been in the office. And then now I'm back into a remote, you know, role, and I've got 10 people spread around the world that I was fortunate to be able to bring them in and have them meet. And I think that was actually one of the things that was a game changer for my team, because they almost all were functioning as if they were on an island in their country, and it was almost like they reported to the country leader or the TA leader instead of to me. So we got that in place pretty quickly to bring the group together and kind of level set and get buy-in as a team as to what our priorities were and kind of our guiding principles and how we would work. And they walked away from that, and it was a pretty intense, like it was 3 or 4 days, right? And they walked away with that of like, okay, now I have a much better understanding of how the team works and how I'm part of the team versus me just being over here as this individual contributor checking off the boxes. So I don't know if you've done anything like that, but that might be an option, right? If they haven't met face to face, because there is a psychology around that faceless entity, and that people tend to think of somebody they haven't met with a lot more negativity than someone that they've built that relationship with. So that at least that initial face-to-face, you know, opportunity is such a big piece, and it's why they're so comfortable being able to look at a coworker and say, hey, can you help me with this? Where somebody at home may not have that relationship, is trying to figure it out on their own. And I don't know if that's helpful, but I know that's what helped my team.
And it's setting the baseline, making sure that you have clearly defined roles, and then meeting at the beginning, I'm assuming, would be a great way to say, okay, I've established, I know this person, especially as you have new people entering the workforce. So we see this a lot, where somebody has a title, they're just joining, maybe they got converted from internship role. They really have no idea of what they need to do, and if they don't have a mentor who's there or somebody they can learn from, because the other issue is you have a bunch of people who have now grown used to being remote, and they're effective, it's efficient, but if you have new people coming in who don't have anybody to kind of follow or learn from, it becomes an issue too.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
More questions? Albert.
So how are either of you handling the multilingual workforce and communicating out to folks where English is not their first language, and making sure that the communications are not only in their language, but the syntax and the meaning actually comes through? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, I can. I don't know if, are you guys global? Do you have any
We are not global. We're in the United States, the UK, and opening our first Canadian store. So I'll let you take this away.
So we do have the requirement that if they're in a country where English isn't the native language, that they do have to be an English speaker. So where we have the biggest challenge with that is Japan. I think there are only like 4% English speakers there, and then it's just a challenging place to recruit anyway. Most of our communication is in English, but there are certain places, so Japan, a lot of our APAC countries and a few of our European countries, I guess Latin America too, but we'll do some stuff in language. But if they do it, it's generating usually within the country, so we don't have to worry about that so much. Where I'm having to deal with it is we've actually just rolled out in-country local language career sites. And then in some of our regions, we have job postings in language, and some of them we don't. And we've been A/B testing some of those because we know that the syntax issue is an issue, and so if we're going to have people take existing job descriptions and write them in a local language, we need somebody on staff to do it, because paying for a translation service generally doesn't work, and we've learned that lesson. But what we've done, like in the case of the job postings, we've just done that in Latin America, and we've seen with both Portuguese and Spanish that our percent of our traffic went up, our percent of applications went up, our apply starts went up, and our apply completions, like every metric went up. Now, interestingly, we did English only, we did both in one, and then we did just the native only, and they performed differently. And that was one of the things that was interesting for us too. But like we think about it, job seekers are going to search in their native language. So if our job postings are in English and they're searching in, in Dutch, then from a search engine optimization standpoint, they're not going to find our content. And so just by making that little bit of a change, we saw the increase in the overall traffic and results. So there's a business case that's being made for us to do that there. I'm not sure exactly how we're doing with all of our other internal communications, but I suspect that it is just that it's somebody on staff in the local area that's doing it, that they're not generating that in Austin, Texas. So.
Our platform, since we work with a lot of non-desk workers that do speak different languages, and usually they're frontline workers, so the hospitality, manufacturing, food and bev, we have automatic translation built in so that it will translate on the fly. It's Google Translate, so it is Google Translate, so sometimes you get some funky things.
Yeah, so to that note, if we use Google Translate in anything, then we just always have somebody local, usually on my team, that is going to proof it and that will make the corrections, but we don't rely on the technology completely by itself.
Yeah, if people are going to post something that's like a whole thing from the CEO, of course they're going to not just use Google, or they probably shouldn't just use Google Translate. Be like, we're coming to get your people or something. Like, okay, not good. They definitely need translation for that because, I'm hoping nobody from Google Translate is here right now, but. Cool, more questions? I can't really see anybody, so you might need to wave something. No?
No?
Good? Do you want me to pull up a few more?
I don't know. Are you guys still awake?
Yeah.
How's
Is
the chicken?
anybody there? Where are my workday friends, actually? They're not even
They're not
here.
in
They're
here?
sleeping now. I told those guys, I was like, if I run out of questions, throw a question up there. But no, they're gone. I think we're good. I mean, we would just be rehashing some of the things we already talked about. I thought this was a really productive thing. And whoever gives you time back. I mean, look, we opened the windows, and we're giving you a few extra minutes. Only 8, but